Now we are going to our next presenter, Ms. Tunde KOVAC, and she will introduce us the affirmative actions in education under the decade of Roma inclusion, and she is an international consultant.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you so much. The aim of this presentation is a little to focus on the issue of affirmative action, because this is one of the areas which are even pre-decade areas for supporting the integration of Roma into the field of education and into the education system. And some of the experiences might be useful to be renewed and retaught. It looks like as if it's one of the most widespread nationwide policies. It originates from pre-decade times in many countries. I looked most particularly into Romania and Serbia. Into Romania, based on an overview, an excellent overview which the Roma Education Fund has funded, and Gallup has provided the data and the analysis, and it really is a very comprehensive overview. And from Serbia, based on my own experience, which is quite long. It's most often applied to secondary and tertiary education. Romania started it in 1992. Serbia started in 2002. I think that many other countries started much more before the start of the decade. It's most often applied into the higher levels of education, and in some countries also to preschool, so it is covering usually those areas where the obligatory compulsory education is not present. And of course, it has to ensure wider access and to compensate for prior discrimination or disadvantage effects, and that's the major rationale. And that has been the way how it has been accepted. It has a possibility, you can analyze the data because administrative data are usually easily gathered. However, then there is the next problem that there is a very substantial lack of more elaborate data, so that you cannot really see the percentages very often of, let's say, from all enrolled Roma, which percentage is that which is going through affirmative action, or what is the percentage from Roma who has finished basic education in the affirmative action program for secondary education, etc. But I think that this is just to highlight that the issue of data which are more elaborate is, of course, here also pertinent, and it has been, I'm sure, already addressed. However, what is visible is that there is always a steep and steady increase of enrollment after 1 to 2 years, and it continues, and the effects are also increased most probably on the completion rate of the previous level. For that, again, we don't have data. This is, for example, the curve for Romania, starting from 2000, covering the period from 2000 to 2007. At 2007, it has leveled, but the further expansion, I'm sure that there are people from Romania who can add to that. The data from Serbia started later, and it was and the situation in the Serbian education system was really how should I say, very, very, very disfavorable for Roma. So it has a very steep increase still, mostly due to the fact that simply more and more Roma are in the education system. The bigger line is from 2003 to 2012, the secondary education affirmative action, and the smaller line, where the data are only from 2007 onwards, is the higher, the tertiary education line. I will skip these 2 slides because we don't have time. These are just showing that the coverage of the different profiles is actually not so imbalanced. So it is not only for short vocational schools or not only for technical. It is relatively widespread. It might be interesting to look into that in more detail when one goes through different countries. Now, I think that this is important, that what I have seen is that the mechanisms differ, that the mechanisms are always situated in the context of enrollment regulations, and is a result, most probably a result of negotiated problem solving. I know for Serbia how that happened, and it really is a problem solving process where different actors are sitting together and then they have figured out a way. My argument will be further that it's now time maybe to refigure the way, since the situation has changed and much more experience has been gathered, so it is time really to look into that, and it's a pity not to make this very powerful mechanism a really fine-tuned one. It is currently usually regulated through paralegal acts, and it involves in both these cases Roma civil society, NGOs in Romania, and Roma National Council in Serbia. There are different mechanisms, and for me these two cases were really interestingly different. In Romania, reserved places are the case, and then the students are applying to the schools, and the number of the reserved places are allocated by the county inspectors. In Serbia, there is a centralized entry or school leaving exam where the students can get into the secondary school directly when they pass and gather the points. If they don't get in directly, they get an affirmative action boost of 30 points. That's 30% of the total points, and then they are again getting into the system, and based on their wish lists, they are allocated to the schools. In tertiary education, in Romania also the reserved places is functioning. In Serbia, 2% reserved places are there financed from the national budget. From the recent years there has been an involvement, and it goes to all universities and faculties, and then where the students are interested, the faculty has to include them. This was, I think that also Osman Balic knows that has been a very long struggle to get there, so that it really is in the budget and not just some allowance to get into the academic world. I have listed, based on all these, on these two examples, I have listed a long list of concern. I will just run through them. I think that it would be worthwhile to go deeper and to discuss what are all the possibilities and where are all the possible pitfalls. The major area of concern, I think, in this moment is how to ensure that affirmative action is not subject to reductions in periods of economic crisis, because that is really a serious risk. And also how to ensure that affirmative action is effective in the imperfect context of education systems. We all have to know that education systems are very far from perfect. They have all sorts of problems, all sorts of flaws, all sorts of inconsistencies, etc. And around affirmative action, these problems of the education system, some of them are listed here, can really also influence the policy-making context, which is also imperfect. So when you look from the side into how the policy-making context is happening, that is really an issue where it really depends on whether there is someone who will take every piece of paper from one office to the other office to ask again, to ensure that the right phone conversation has been held, etc., etc. So when one deconstructs what is political will, then one actually sees as lots of procedural issues where things can get stuck. What I think that it is important to highlight that there are also emerging new barriers, like school leaving exams or matura, which can also hamper the further enrollment of the students. And the analysis also showed that that dissemination of information is very often a barrier, so simply it does not get disseminated enough to potential applicants, to teachers, to schools, and more importantly, or also importantly, it does not feed back to policymakers. So policymakers don't know what has happened afterwards. There is also limited access by completion rate of previous education level, and dropout is most often or can happen that it's simply not monitored. This is a very telling example from Serbia, where it is evident that even at the preschool level, which is the compulsory preschool level, the preschool is simply not reacting. The child is not coming, the preschool is not reacting, only this is the percentage of reaction. Belgrade being the worst. So simply they lose the child and don't care. In order to save time, I would like to focus on this end here, that it seems that one of the potential problems with affirmative action is that it's as a remnant from the pre-decade times, it is usually implemented as a standalone measure. It is implemented by someone else than those who are devising further Roma policy, and it can get stuck in there. So it is extremely important to bring it out and to connect it to social assistance like stipends, scholarships, to educational assistance like dormitories, mentors, dropout prevention mechanisms, community involvement. Very often parents are also excluded, at least in the area of Southeast Europe, so then the Roma parents especially, so that is also missing. And what the results also show, that transition to employment is not usually not taken care of. So the students are employable, but then the employment is not really coming. A couple of recommendations from the analysis. One most definite is that it is a very powerful measure, it is very important, and it is important to expand and to develop further. I think that it's fair to say that it is important to use this 10+ years of experience to fine-tune now the affirmative action policy. We don't have analytical reports by country. Problems can also differ by country. So, for example, in Romania, the procedure is seen as too short, and many students could have, and also too many places are there, so that students are having incentives to get in through the affirmative action instead of getting through the regular procedure. In Serbia, on the other hand, the procedure is too long, so students risk to arrive late and not to start with their peers, and that is again creating problems. There are different experiences, but also common dilemmas which a comparative analysis would really benefit from. And I think that it is extremely important to have this on mind, that the devil lies in the details in this respect. It is a very nice procedure, etc. It looks like everything is fine, and then you just see how the details can create problems. The basic recommendation is that to expand the affirmative action policy into comprehensive and coherent education support policy, connecting throughout the whole education cycle, connecting to social assistance, and what is extremely important, two more connections. One is connection to the community and networking of the students, which is usually not happening, and the other is vigilance for employability and really looking after that. And maybe just the last recommendation, we should start talking about affirmative action for employment, at least in the education sector. Thank you so much.